Thank you. Hi, folks. We are so glad to see all of you here tonight. Thank you so much for coming. As you probably know, we have a tight regimen this evening. And I'm going to ask you if you would please hold your questions if we have time afterwards to answer a few questions. That'll be a gift, but we need to be out the door at 8 o'clock. Sorry about that. So you may not have a chance to, but we will hold questions till later. And I'm going to get right to the introduction. Rick Bunting is a very active photographer and naturalist. Since his retirement from SUNY Potsdam's Crane School of Music, he pursues these activities full time. Countless admirers look forward daily to Rick's photos, which will likely be accompanied by combinations of humor, history, surprise, poetry, insight, and reverence. As one of our board members expressed very recently, everyone loves Rick. Welcome, Rick, and thanks for being here.
My pleasure to be here. If we don't have time for questions, I'll meet in the parking lot or something. I used to go to Florida every year for a month to 6 weeks. Then came the dreaded COVID. And this year was the first time I had had a chance to go back. And I wasn't looking forward to doing any driving. And a friend of mine named Mike said, "I'll drive you down." And I said, "Oh, that changes everything." So we went together for a week in Florida. We're going to start this little tour in Venice, Florida, at the Venice Rookery. How many people have been to the Venice Rookery? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. A small island, maybe half again the size of this room, would you say, for those people that have been there? Right in the middle of the city. And nesting on that island are great egrets, black crown, night herons, green, I don't know whether there was a green heron there this year or not, great blue herons, of course, and hinga, cormorants, all jammed into that one spot. It's a photographer's dream, but it's also a little bit of a nightmare because they're right on top of each other. So when you're trying to get pictures, but anyway, we're going to start out by featuring what I consider to be the star of the show, the great egret. And before I do that, I'll file a couple of disclaimers. I'm not a photographer. I'm not an ornithologist. I like to observe things, take pictures of them, and thanks to people like some of you, I get to share them. So anyway. Let me see if this is going to work. First of all, you have to make it so it has the green side up. And the green side up. Well, okay. Let me figure out where the advancer is here.
Do you need to just push the button when you tell me to?
No, I'll do it.
It should be this one.
Oh,
It'd be that one.
should be that one. So it's not my problem.
No. It was working. Oh, enter.
Enter. Well, as if you didn't know, right? But I wanted to use this photo as an example. One of the neat places to see birds in southern Florida, particularly around that Sanibel, Fort Myers area, which is where we were, is in the ditches. You know, you think of all these, you know, bucolic settings and things that you can see the birds in. And then you drive by the ditches, and here are some wonderful little photo ops. We were pulling out of the parking lot, and Mike said to me, on the other side of that guardrail, you know, there's a great blue heron. I have a thing for great blue herons. I think some of you know that. And so I stuck the camera out the window and held it up, looking through the screen so I could get the picture above the guardrail. And it was the nicest picture of a great blue that I took the entire time I was down there. So that's the purpose of that. We'll start out with the stars of the show, taking a peek at us, and notice those faceplates turn green now, you know, from the usual yellow. And notice also that some of them have, and I don't think the pointer is working on here either. No. Some of them on the faceplate have some blue, just like the great blue herons do. And we'll be checking one of those out shortly. But you can also see her little clutch there. This was not a time when we had any good photos of, you know, being born. We weren't there at the right time for those shots. I don't know whether how many of you are familiar with anhingas or not, but they're a marvelous bird, sometimes called the snake bird because they just swim with their head out of the water. This is a pair getting ready to talk about mating, and you can see he's expanding himself, and she doesn't appear to be paying too much attention to him at all. And I love these kind of photos because it shows that we did not invent eye makeup, you know. And here's another pair that's on a nest. That's one of the other things about this spot is there are multiple nests of different kinds of birds. So you not only have 5, 6 different kinds of birds, you have a spectrum of breeding going on. With the cormorants, sometimes known as the aqua eye, I always think about this bird that looks like somebody sewed a button on the side of their head. You know, this is a pair getting ready. This is a pair that's already building a nest, as you can see, and this is an adult feeding some young. So right there were three different nests of cormorant jammed onto this little island. The great blue was quite close, as you can see, but only had one baby, a pretty good sized baby, however. As you can see, this is what I'm talking about when you're taking pictures. You can see all around there are other birds, other nests. This is a great blue that was just starting a nest, and I like this picture because it shows you all of the plumage that occurs in the breeding season. First of all, that beautiful blue eye plate and that wonderful plume that he has coming off the top of his head, and then the breast and back plumage. This is the black-crowned night heron. They nest internally, shall we say. They tuck their nests in, so we don't get to see their nest, but we know that they're there. No. So we'll leave Venice, but I leave you with my favorite photo that I took of the great egrets. They are a spectacularly elegant bird. We had a great time there, and we decided to make our way to a fairly close by pond named Powell Creek Pond. And the reason we went there was because Mike had never seen a purple gallinule. So we were going to go and look for a purple gallinule. We were greeted. Oh, sorry. I'm going. I have no idea how to reverse. So what you just saw in fast motion was a bibill grebe and cormorant having brunch. And now we are at I wanted to do this quickly, but I didn't want to do it that quickly. Now we're at the glossy ibis here. This is a beautiful bird, but they really become beautiful when you get them in the right light, and you can see the iridescent plumage on the bird. We also had some other treats there. This is a little blue heron, a confusing bird to people in birding in Florida, because there's lots of white birds. And a little blue heron shouldn't be white, but it is for the first year. And as you can see, there's little patches of blue starting. And this bird, by about now, or maybe in a month, will be full-blown adult plumage. And I have a picture of one of those coming up later. Well, this is what we went for. This is the purple gallinule. He was rather secretive for a while, but he did eventually come out and parade himself, and to show his, well, what my grandson would call gigunda feet, or ginormous too is another one. Ginormous is now fun. And they have to have those because that spreads their weight, of course, and allows them to walk on those large lily pads, which is where they like to be. And sometimes they rock around. I'm not sure whether he's doing rock around the clock or the hokey pokey there, but it was kind of fun to watch them, because when sometimes they jump to the next pad and slide and swing. So when we got to Fort Myers, our first day there was spent at Harns Marsh. That's a favorite place of birding for me, and we were greeted there by the usual limpkins, who were going into breeding. And I don't know whether you've been around limpkins when they're going into breeding, but it sounds like somebody is doing bad things to a baby, nearby. And we had both in the water and on land breeding us. Crazy. And lots of tricolored herons, a favorite bird. I was standing, I'll come up on another picture here. I was standing waiting to see the gray-headed swamp hen, which was one of the birds that I wanted to photograph there. And this guy landed in this little tree right in front of me, as close as these chairs, and I said, well, thank you very much. I'll be glad to take your picture, and he stayed long enough for me to do that. There were also some black-bellied whistling ducks there, and I was hoping that they would come closer, but they decided to stay away. Beautiful bird, and I was hoping I could share a picture with you. This is the gray-headed swamp hen. They're a very interesting bird. They are a bird of Asia. The population that exists in Florida now is the result of some escaped birds in the mid-90s. I think it was 1996. I can't remember exactly, but mid-90s. Private collection of these birds. Wasn't an intentional, dropping the kitten off at the barn, that type of thing. They escaped, and they began to reproduce, of course, and they became a real topic of conversation among people in Florida. At one time, they even tried to do a plan that they were going to remove some of them. And they captured, I think, 3,500 or something like that. and they suddenly realized this is just an exercise in futility. You know, there is no way you're going to control this. The thought was that they will affect the population of the common gallinule, and perhaps some, and also the purple gallinule. But there hasn't been any data yet about that. We need some graduate students doing some work on the populations of those birds and whether or not they're being affected. Well, I waited for this guy, and he finally came down to the edge of the water, kind of a moat between me and him. And I kept coaxing him to go get close to that reflection. We move it right out there to the water, but he wasn't too good. But eventually, he did get pretty close to the other side. And you talk about a bill. I mean, that is one hip looking thing he's got on the front there. I mean, that is pretty neat. So we don't know yet how dangerous he is to the other populations, but of course, as you might expect, he's now become an attraction. So people literally go to this section of Florida, you know, to see the gray-headed swampin. So the next day we went to Bunch Beach. Bunch Beach used to be my favorite place to go birding in Fredonia, sorry, in Florida. And one of the problems now is that it's overused by humans because it's very difficult to get on the causeway in the Sanibel. All the construction workers going to and from. It's very difficult, plus parking is now $6 an hour on Sanibel. So people are flocking to the other options, you know, one of which unfortunately is Bunch Beach. But there were shorebirds there. This is a little least sandpiper to show you, and you know, solitary semi-palmated plover. There were the usual tidal pond pools in the low tides, so you could get some nice photographs. This is of a tricolored heron again, and we did get to see the oyster catchers, and it was very interesting. I was kind of disappointed with the population of things we did get to see, but then we were talking to some people later, and I said, yeah, we saw the two oyster catchers. She said, you saw the oyster catchers? I said, yes. He said, nobody's seen the oyster catchers down there. And I said, oh, yeah, we saw the oyster catchers. Yeah, you know. Yeah. So that sort of changed the way I felt about the trip to Bunch Beach. And of course, quite close to Bunch Beach is Dig Darling over on the island. Happy to report that it's in rehab. The mangroves will work their own magic at some point, but they've rebuilt the buildings and things are starting to happen there. The birds are fine. We were greeted by a snowy egret, which is very appropriate. This was one of the birds that Teddy Roosevelt engaged in all of his activities to stop the plumage trade. And you can see why. One of my favorite birds in Florida are the reddish egrets. They hunt by running and then stopping and opening their wings and waiting for the fish to come into the shadows that their wings make. So there's this constant running and stopping. And unfortunately, we didn't have too many photo ops with them. My favorite bird actually is the white morph of this bird, which is just a spectacular bird. But we didn't have time to go looking for a white morph. This is an adult little blue heron. You remember that little white guy that was there? This is what he changes into. Probably one of the birds that people go to most to go to Dayton to see are the roseate spoonbills. We were a little late. We were in late February, And in late February, they leave for their breeding grounds up by Tampa and Sarasota. Up and there's a couple islands up in there, and that's where they do their breeding. So, but we did get some people that didn't catch the first flight, and they were over on the Indigo Trail. For those of you that have been there before, this is an adult. He has that dark pink slash on the side and the black on his head, and the design of the bill, compared to this, which is an immature, still a beautiful pink bird, of course. But notice the difference in the bill and the face. We did get green herons there. I love this bird. Becky was standing alongside me one time up at the swamp, and she said, "Well, where do I go to see the green herons?" I said, "Go over there by that thing, and one will come in on the lock." And one came in on the lock and started walking right toward her. And she says, "Rick, you have got to be kidding. This is crazy. This is crazy." But we knew what their feeding habits were, and but this is in Florida, and as you can see, it's the same bird. This is an adult, and he was doing some fishing as well. A spectacular bird to watch fish. They'll take a hold of a log and turn themselves absolutely vertical, going down in the water, somehow hanging on the log. I always tell my wife's a yoga teacher, and I always say, "You should see what the green herons do." And you know, fantastic. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Well, now I just learned how to do it. Well, I can't go back there now. I'm on the clock. And of course, this is the guy that I wanted to show you. It's funny when you go to Florida and you're a birder, and people are walking around. You know, you're used to somebody saying to you, you know, what birds did you see today? The first thing they want to know is, did you see any alligators? Did you see any alligators? That's the big draw. You know, this was a good sized one, and he was cruising by, and the green heron was right up there, paying no attention to him, and him paying no attention to the green heron. They know each other, and the green heron knows when it should be paying attention, and it doesn't need to be. So this is a favorite picture of mine that I took at Ding Darling. We would go over in the evening sometime. Well, actually, we'd go over in late afternoon, and then wait until all the traffic had gone off. And the white birds, particularly the snowies and the great egrets, will converge to roost in the mangroves. And the lighting is just gorgeous at that time of day. And you can see the reflections in the water. You know, I couldn't paint that. You would say, well, that's an exaggeration. You know, there's no way. But it's my favorite picture. My content is acceptable. Okay. I did meet one of my family once, the whole time I was down there. We went to a place called Crew, which is right near Corkscrew Swamp. And again, we wanted to go there because Mike had never seen snail kites, and the snail kites that we saw over at Harns Marsh were all in flight. The water was too deep, so they weren't doing any hunting and feeding. And that was exactly the same problem at this place. So we would see them in the distance, but I did get to see a relative who painted the bird designed by committee, you know, in terms of color. There were a lot of white ibis there. I love the way white ibis decorate trees. You know, one or two of them will collect, and then another one will come in. It's almost like like there's a stage director. You know, no, look to the left. Look, that's good. Now you hold, and then I used to do stage directing, so I guess that the face only a mother can love. This guy really wanted to have his picture taken. He just stayed there and let us do it. You know, I made some somewhat pejorative comments about this bird once in a post, and a woman took me to task. She was a wildlife rehabilitator who had worked out in North Carolina. She said, "This is the smartest bird we ever had, you know, to rehabilitate, you know. Give them credit for their intelligence. We will. The face, however, is still a face only a mother can love, you know." This was the most uncommon bird that we saw. This is a Western kingbird. I had seen them a couple of times in Central Florida. This is the first time I had seen them there. It was neat. It was neat to see this bird. We had some birds along the way. This is a loggerhead shrike. Those of you who get my photos know we were looking at northern shrike this winter several times. We had two areas where we could see them, but this is the common shrike in Florida, the loggerhead, which seems like a pretty good name for the bird, you know. And in the same place, this was at Lakes Park. There was this mallard sitting there, and he just kind of sat there a little bit, and I said, I have to take this bird's picture, because everything about a mallard's plumage is right there in front of you. You know, first of all, they don't usually flash the speculum like that, you know, the blue part. So there he is, and alongside of him was his wife. And she was preening, and she was creating these abstracts with her plumage, which I think were just gorgeous, you know, absolutely wonderful. Those of you who get my posts know about me and abstracts. So, well, I wanted to hurry along then because I have a story to tell you. Mike came to me and he said, I just looked on eBird, and it seems that over at Harns Marsh we had seen a couple of sandhill crane, but he said there's a pair of sandhill crane and they have two colts. Why they're called colts, I don't know, but the kids are called colts. And I know we've already been to Harns Marsh. I said, we're going to Harns Marsh if there's colts. I've only photographed them 2 or 3 times, and only once was I able to catch them feeding beyond, you know. So I said, we're going. So we went. We arrived at, I would say, between 6:30 and 7 o'clock in the morning, and just getting light at that time. And there's this guy coming off the berm. There's a berm that goes alongside this marsh. And so Mike says to him, can you tell us anything about where we could see the family, you know, with the colts? He said, I can tell you exactly where to go. And we said, okay. And he said, you go down here, and when the curve's right down there, you stand there, and about 7:30 in the morning, she will bring them out. And I'm beginning to say, yeah, okay. Don't overdo it. Don't overdo it. But he gave us a whole set of directions, you know. Well, this is what we're talking about. About 10 on cuteness scale, wouldn't you say? You know. So we went down to the edge and waited. And at 7:30, there she came with the 2 colts, the 2 kids. And he said, well, the male will come out and he'll join her, and then they're going to swim across the moat. And I'm saying, oh yeah, wait a minute, time out. I have to tell you, somebody had said your favorite part of this trip, and the whole reason I'm doing this program is because I got a picture of them swimming, you know. And so anyway, the male is with her now, And they come to the edge of this little moat that they have to go across. And they take the kids into the water and they swim across the water right over to our side. Now I have to tell you, a little before this happened, two other guys arrived. And they said, "Oh, you're here for the show." And we said, "Evidently, that's where you know." And so they said, "Well, here's what's going to happen." And we said, "This is crazy." And these two guys were great. And they said, "Well, when they come up, you don't want to stay here. You want to come with us. You come around to the back, and what they'll do is they'll walk up the bank, and then they'll go to the feeding ground, and you'll have a better view from up there." We said, "We're with you." There were no questions anymore, you know. So they start taking the kids up into this kind of meadowy area, and then oh, it doesn't get any cuter than that. I mean, the adults started doing a little feeding on their own, and the kids were kind of poking around a little bit, but as you will see in a little while, there was a class to be held. You know, they were going to be taught what to do. But they would watch, but as you can see, lots of times they weren't watching at all. You know, they were doing their own thing because they're kids, and that's what kids do. But mom was started a little bit hurting at one point, and she was getting them together and sticking her bill down and saying, "This is what you're supposed to do." You know, this is one of my favorite photos. It doesn't get any cuter than that. The guy on the left seems to get the idea. The guy on the right hasn't got it yet. You know what I mean? But at any rate, she's showing them that you have to probe the area to look for the food. Well, okay, you probe and I'll look. You know. And at one point, this guy turned around and looked at me, and I told you my heart was like, "Oh, you are the cutest little thing I've ever seen." And at any rate, the kids, to make the story shorter, they were a little bit apprehensive about doing any feeding on their own. I love this photo because it looks like she's saying, "Now, I want you over here now, right now, because I am going to show you how it works." You know, and she did. She proceeded to pick at things, and the kid would come down and pick at it a little bit and get the food, and she was doing all the work, you know, sort of like setting the table, and then he'd get down and pick it up. And sometimes she would pick it up for him. And this is the picture where she is passing him a grub. Yeah, that was worth the trip to Florida, right there, that picture. Well, they fed on this plateau for quite some time, moving in different directions, and these guys would say, "Move over here, move over here. You'll see they'll come right by you." And he told us to go down a little ways and stay down because they were going to take them down and cross this other moat to get to another feeding ground. And you don't ask questions at this point. You just go where they tell you to go. And so we go, and she literally marched right past us with these calls, as close as these chairs. He said, "Just stand still. She'll take the kids right by you." And we're staying. We weren't going to take any pictures at that point, you know, but there they go. He said, okay, I believe every word you say." Well, they take them right over to this edge, but this had a little bank to it, you know, that other moat they could slide into. So look at the kids. The adults, they're going down, they're going to get in the water, it's no problem at all. The kids look like they're saying, I don't know about this. This doesn't look like the other one. You know, I don't know whether we can do this or not. So But down the hill they go into the water. Yeah. I never expected to be able to do that, to get that photo. And this one is even better. Sandhill cranes swim. And they took the kids and they went across this moat. It was a reasonable little swim for them to go. And this is them getting out of the water and coming to the end of their time with us. And it has come to the end of my time with you. And I will leave you with one of my favorite quotes from Mary Oliver and a personal mantra of mine from a poem called Instructions for Living a Life. Pay attention, be astonished, and tell about it. So I thank you. I thank you for listening. And I hope I left enough time to answer questions. And I'll say one thing here. We'll come back to that guy. And if you would like to get the photos that I send out, just simply send me your email and I'll put you on the list. And my wife always says, you can save yourself a lot of trouble if you just do this as a blog and then people, sign into it. And I guess that's not the fun of it. The fun of it is you go to the computer in the morning and you turn it on and you say, what's in the picture today? That's what's fun. So I enjoy doing it. And tomorrow will be the picture of a local Canada goose family that was just born. So if you would like to get those pictures and other pictures, simply let me know. Now, do you have questions? I'm sorry I went so fast in that front part, but I did not want to have us clamoring about it. I mentioned before that I spent part of my life as a stage director. So I know that the people downstairs that are getting ready for the play don't want a thundering herd, to open the show, so to speak. So I can sympathize with them. But questions? Who has a question? Don't tell me I left you questionless. Yeah. Yes. Yes. We actually have sandhill cranes nesting around here now, down by Bainbridge and in the north of Norwich area. There were four pair last summer. So that's new. There's a lot of things in birding that are new. My sister, who was an ornithologist, said, you don't want to try to write a field guide now. If it takes 4 months, 4 years to get a book into production, everything in there that you did with range maps and things like that are going to be outdated. We now have birds that are overwintering that never overwintered before. We have developing resident populations of birds that were always migrating. It's a very fluid time, in terms of what's happening in the avian world. It is, however, also a very exciting time, because you never know. I mean, let's face it, you never did know what you were going to see on a given day. But today it's even more fascinating, which is one of the reasons why I go to the same areas all the time. I believe in the response that John Burroughs gave once when someone said to him, he was the great naturalist of the 1800s, said to him one night, where can we go tomorrow to see something different? And he said, the same place you went today, and that's one of the joys of our area here, this whole area. of central New York is a birding paradise. There's no question. Anyway, I'm not letting you ask questions. Somebody else had one.
Astonished to find out that Sandhill cranes swim.
Me too.
I mean, do you know whether other cranes swim? Are there any of those?
Yes. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. But usually with like great blues, when great blues will catch a fish, but it's too heavy for them to get out of the water, they'll do the same thing an eagle will do. They'll wing swim, to the edge so that they have a place to eat it. So whether they can do, I don't know. You talk about a doggy paddle. I mean, that's got to be there's got to be a lot of action going on there to keep yourself going. But got to remember they have no trouble staying afloat. Hollow bones and the plumage. So it's not a question of fighting to keep themselves up. They're just trying to get forward. And evidently, it's not that much of a problem, as you can see. Yes.
I was sort of birding from March 8th to the 18th. So were you before?
Yes.
Okay, because when I got there, the great egrets didn't have the blue plate already.
That's right.
Yeah,
They lose them. They will lose them quite quickly when they start to raise the family. If you come up and visit me at the swamp where I spend a lot of time, you'd see, that those great blues don't have much blue at all by the end of May. It's pretty much.
Some fantastic photos.
Well, it's.
Things that I got, which I didn't count on. I got a lot of gators.
Oh yeah.
I've been like down in Everglades for quite some time.
Okay.
Further north, but and then I got a mother alligator right along the edge of the shore with the babies, the young floating on lily pads.
Yeah.
And they were bright yellow.
Yes.
It was
Did
like
you-
a great.
Did you get a photo of them riding on her back? Okay. Yeah.
Because it's like 15 feet from the gator at least.
Yeah.
Right? So the people walked up and stood there by her and she lunged.
Yes, she will. It's there's no cure for stupid. And when you watch how people treat alligators in Florida, pushing their kid, I say, look, I said to one woman once, I said, if you want to get close, why don't you get close? But leave the kid by me here, because if you've ever seen a gator go on their back haunches and lunge, from here to there, in the lunge, let alone they do miss, thank goodness, sometimes. But they're a very dangerous creature, and you don't.
And I'm playing for your milk there. So I'm all about watching how the tails are moving.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I went over and said, this is crazy, you guys need to move back. So we continued on, and also we heard screaming. And sure enough, we lunged at some.
Sure.
Get it.
Yeah. No cure for stupid. Yeah. Andy. Yeah, they were at the beginning of the Harns Marsh, and they're becoming more prolific down there because they have created the adaptation to eat the apple snail, the invasive snail. So they're doing very well, as are the snail kites. But by the way, two generations of snail kites. There was evolutionary change in the bill. The minute this apple snail became available, they couldn't eat it very well. And there is a hook. And that hook got longer, measurably longer by the researchers at the University of Florida. the birds were getting larger. You know, you say to yourself, you know, we always think of evolution as a protracted event. The animals from Cuba that came in, now it's all brown animals, and they thought the native animals are gone. What they didn't know was, in less than 15 generations, now an animal's generation, it's not very long. 15 of those, they increased the size by double of the pads on their feet. And the native animals live in the tops of the tree. The population is fine, but you got to know where it is, you know. But so we're not only going to see things that we've never seen that are coming into our lives or staying in our lives from an avian point of view, but we're also going to see evolutionary change happen rapidly sometimes for these animals. And I always tell my grandson, who's just, those of you who know Tanner, just now into his beginning of his career, I said, man, you are on the cusp of craziness, you know, the things that are going to change. You know, I always taught him never say never about anything in nature. It never happens through this. You can say you've never seen it, but don't say it doesn't happen, because we don't even know what's going to happen. Any more questions? I'm doing too much talking.
Many thank yous from the people, so.
Many thank yous to the Zoom people, you know. Well, folks, thank you so much. We can let rest the people down and sit.